My name is Anubha Bhonsle and this is Newsworthy. News, not noise, context, not conflict. We'd so appreciate if you support our work. The link to contribute is in the bio or in the description, depending on which platform you're watching this on. Let's get started. You may have heard the words vaccine, equity, and patents a lot over the last few months. Why are we short on vaccines? If there is a company that has the formula to make them, why can't it be shared, produced at scale? Everyone gets to vaccinate their citizens, and we put COVID-19 behind. Sorry, I'm smiling because that's utopia. Now, everyone agrees we need 1, global cooperation to end this pandemic. 2, vaccines are our best shot to achieving it. 3, vaccine production needs to be ramped up. And 4, the world needs an equitable distribution of vaccines. What we haven't been able to agree is how to do it. At the crux of it are vaccine patents. You must have heard recently the US said it would support a temporary waiver of patents on COVID-19 vaccines. What does this mean? This means it will support a proposal at the World Trade Organization put forward by India, South Africa, and 100 other nations asking for a temporary waiver on vaccine patents. Let me break that down a little bit more. All inventions are covered by patents. That includes medicines and vaccines. These are legal protections, intellectual property rights that are given to manufacturers. It gives them exclusive monopoly over their discoveries, and in this case, those discoveries are vaccines. So, no other manufacturer can make their own version of a patented vaccine, which means only the original maker sells it and makes money out of it in multiple countries. Let's rewind just a little bit. In 1995, the TRIPS agreement was negotiated at the WTO. TRIPS stands for Trade-Related Aspects of Intellectual Property Rights. All signatory countries had to then enact a domestic law. This domestic law guaranteed minimum standards of IP protection to these innovators for at least 20 years. Now, there are exceptions to the TRIPS agreement, public health emergencies like this very pandemic. So, countries can actually issue compulsory licenses to manufacturers that are other than the innovator after compensating the innovator. Now, this is obviously only on paper. In the real world, using these TRIPS exceptions is a long-winded process. There are several conditions big pharma companies are unwilling to start with. Let's cut to 2021. India, South Africa, and other developing countries are before the WTO asking for a temporary waiver. They obviously want it to be quicker, they want it to be larger in scope than what TRIPS flexibilities allow. Their argument is if manufacturers are allowed to use the formula for vaccines developed anywhere in the world, it is going to ramp up production. This is the proposal that the US has said it will support after considerable pressure. UK, Japan, and of course, pharma companies are blocking the waiver. What are their arguments? They are saying, number one, this is not going to incentivize discovery. If you set a precedent for patent waivers for COVID-19, what is to say it's not going to happen again in the future? And if it does, why is any pharma company going to invest billions in R&D if they're not going to get exclusive royalties for it? It's a pertinent point, but there is another way to look at it. Yes, a waiver is going to obviously reduce the amount of money big pharma companies make because competition is going to drive prices down. But in many cases, taxpayers helped foot the bill for development of several COVID-19 vaccines. And the biggest example of that is right in front of us, the Oxford-AstraZeneca vaccine. 97% of the funding for the Oxford-AstraZeneca vaccine is reported to have come from public sources. Government departments of the UK, scientific institutes, European Commission, and various other charities. Yet, And it's a big yet. Yet Oxford University backed out of its very public pledge to maintain an open license for the vaccine that would have made its vaccine freely available for any manufacturer, and went on to sign an exclusive license agreement with AstraZeneca. AstraZeneca in turn received more than $2 billion from the US and European Union for both research and in purchase commitment. AstraZeneca then went ahead and entered into an exclusive manufacturing agreement with our very own Serum Institute of India. So publicly funded to a large extent, but patented for exclusive profits. The second argument by Big Pharma is that waiving patents will do less than people think it will. And that is partly true. Patent waivers are not a silver bullet. Developing and manufacturing vaccines has several steps and all kinds of intellectual property. A patent is protecting the conceptual knowledge of key ingredients and processes. Then there is the expertise, the technical know-how to manufacture it. That may be protected as a trade secret. Then there is all the data from clinical trials to test vaccine safety and efficacy. That may be protected by a copyright. So, a patent waiver alone is not going to empower an Indian manufacturer to start vaccine production immediately. They are going to need to source raw materials, they will have to expand their production facilities, they will have to design the process, and of course they will have to conduct clinical trials to get approvals. Now, Big Pharma and philanthropists like Bill Gates say most countries and companies don't have that know-how. Allowing them to make life-saving vaccines is going to reduce the quality and safety, which is not exactly true. In fact, the same was said about drugs back in the 90s, and yet India has a flourishing and effective generic drug market. Today, there is production capacity and the know-how in the developing world, and it is lying unused, which is why India, South Africa, and other countries have asked for more. They have asked for a waiver of patents, trade secrets, copyright, industrial designs, which is also why you shouldn't hold your breath that all of this will come to pass. As I said, TRIPS negotiations are long and tedious. They can last for months, and I'm being conservative here. The WTO session, where a call on this particular COVID proposal will be taken, is scheduled for November end. We don't even know what the text of that proposal will be. Remember, the richest nations are against it. And I'll also remind you, the US has only said it will support a temporary patent waiver on vaccines and nothing else. India, at its end, is also not doing a good job of showing it's serious about waiving patents. Let's forget Covishield, since the Serum Institute of India has obligations to pay royalty to AstraZeneca to remain the only manufacturer in India to make that vaccine. But what about Covaxin? Remember, made in India, developed in India through a public-private partnership. Research, development, and trials for Covaxin have been shouldered and funded by the Indian government and the ICMR to a considerable extent. But the exclusive licensing rights for Covaxin are with Bharat Biotech. Bharat Biotech has signed its own exclusive agreement with firms like Ocugen for the supply of 100 million doses of Covaxin in the United States. In fact, recently, the Supreme Court asked the center why it wasn't invoking clauses of our very own Patent Act and issuing compulsory licenses for Covaxin to other manufacturers who can step up to the challenge. That writ petition is still being heard. Only recently, and very recently, 3 public sector units have been given permission to produce Covaxin. This delay means production in some cases is only going to start after 6 to 12 months. We know we need vaccines now. So, you see, there is, as legal experts say, an obvious contradiction between India's position when it goes to the WTO to waive all intellectual property rights on all vaccines and our very own domestic stance on not making available open licenses for the production of Covaxin. And that reduces India's leverage to ask for waivers. So it's not the silver bullet that's going to solve everything. I'll stop here. My hope is this made sense, it added value, and got you to go beyond the headline. If it did, do consider supporting us. The link, as I said at the start, is in the bio or in the description. I'm Anubha Bhonsle. This is Newsworthy. Thank you for your time.